Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Peters, and I will be your host for what we think will be something special. We're here today with the AGX new executive director, Dr. Harrison Campbell, to kick off a series we're calling AGX Talks. Harry, really good to have you here with us.
Thanks, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so for our audience, we want to talk about a few different things here today. We'll start out with a little bit of background on what is the AGX, and then we'll talk about why we are doing this series and what can the listeners expect. So let's start with some background. It'd be really good to understand from you, Dr. Campbell, what is the AGX?
Well, the AGX, of course, is a community of applied geographers, and we exist. Our organization exists to promote the application of geographic theories and tools and data to solving various kinds of contemporary social and environmental questions. Another sort of purpose, we really have two purposes, two things that we do. Another, of course, is to promote this kind of networking and sharing of ideas and experiences among those who do applied geographic work. And what's important there is to understand that this is not just a community of academic researchers, but also of non-academic practitioners as well. So we are represented by folks in academia, as well as in government and industry in the nonprofit sector. But at any rate, we achieve our two basic goals in three different ways. One is through our annual conference, which we typically hold in October. Another is through the publication of our journal, the Papers in Applied Geography. And thirdly, and increasingly, through various kinds of outreach activities like the podcast that we're doing today.
That's great. That's great. And how long has this group been around?
This group's been around since 1978. The very first Applied Geography Conference was held at SUNY Binghamton, organized by John Fraser, who was at SUNY Binghamton, and Bart Epstein from Kent State University. And the conference has been growing ever since.
Yeah, some great history there and some true leaders in the field.
Indeed.
Yeah. So the people that are in applied geography, they're really doing location work in the field. They're applying spatial thinking and they're applying geospatial methods. Can we maybe dig in on a couple of examples of those to have our listeners understand a little bit better what we're talking about?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, when I was first introduced to applied geography, I thought it was all about retail location. And indeed, that's an important part of what we do, and we still do it. But I thought it was all about, studying market areas, their demographics, the presence of competitors, and how we go about site selection, whether it's in retail or in industry. But of course, applied geography is a whole lot more, and it always has been. So in addition to these kinds of site selection sorts of work and studies that we do, we also look at questions of transportation and land use and how that affects neighborhood change. We look at land use, land cover studies. We do water resources work. We do crime mapping, hazards, disasters, diffusion, right? Diffusion of infectious diseases, for example. COVID is one of the great examples of globalization and spatial interaction and how these things affect different places at different rates.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, as you first started talking, names like Dr. Huff or Grant Thrall sort of came to mind for me as you think about retail, but you're right, it's so much broader than that today, so much application area. So maybe let's take our next topic then as to why we are doing this series.
Well, there's at least a couple of reasons as to why we should do this series. One, of course, is that we want to bring applied geography to the world, right? And it has such great application and relevance to so many things that we do, and so we really want to talk to various kinds of experts in the field, find out what they do, how they do it, how they got to where they are, how it is that location and geographic and spatial thinking helps with their decision making in their professional lives. The other part about of the podcast, I guess, is to help young geographers with some advice about how they might go about navigating the job market, how it is they might build their professional networks and things like this. And frankly, our organization is really very good at at the business of recruiting, right? Putting students into various kinds of programs, or for that matter, employers looking for folks with kind of geospatial skills that they might need. So one of the things that I always find really satisfying about our organization is that students really play a central role in what we do.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is an important part of what we'll get from our podcast.
Yeah, you're talking about really the sharing of information, but more importantly, the sharing of ideas is what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what can our listeners expect as we go forward in this series?
Well, I think they're going to be introduced to a number of very interesting folks who do really important work, right? In whether it's social, environmental, economic work. And they're going to find out exactly how it is that that spatial thinking comes into play, right? And how it is that it informs our decision-making process, how it is that it helps us make resource allocation decisions, and how it is that geographic analysis is applied across all kinds of different working environments, all kinds of different kinds of questions, and different sectors of our economy.
Yeah, so a great opportunity not only for students, but academics as well to sort of understand what's coming from the practitioner view and then maybe take that back into the classroom. So I can see really that there being a full cycle there.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergies to be had.
Yeah. It occurs to me now, I didn't ask you a question when we first started. What do you do as an applied geographer?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, just as background, my very first applied geography meeting was in 1994, and I went at the encouragement of Kingsley Haynes and the late Roger Stow, and I gave a paper on a large development project in the Washington, D.C. area. And from that moment, I was hooked on applied geography. My field is economic development, and so any sort of development questions, especially policy questions, are inherently geographic and spatial in nature. And these are the kinds of studies and things that I love to see. So a lot of my work has to do with analyzing various kinds of development policies, working with state and local governments, and helping them to devise and assess their own economic development strategies. And over the years, I have done all kinds of work related to employment growth, to labor force, to amenities, to income growth, and so forth. So, I've been a long time applied geography guy now since at least 1994.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated topic, the field that you're studying, especially today with all the things that are happening with the economy. So
Indeed it is.
yeah.
No shortage of material.
Well, I thank you for that. And I think with that, I'm going to wrap up this session of AGX Talks and say thanks to our listeners. We want to ask you to be sure to join us again. We have some great speakers lined up coming in our next sessions, including the U.S. Census Bureau and someone from Yum Brands. So some really interesting talks to look forward to. Harry, again, thank you to you and for giving us your time.
Thank you, Linda. My pleasure.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone. And until next time, take care.